Hey everybody, before we start the show, I wanted to let you know that Burn Bright, an original sci-fi RPG that I worked on, is now available on Roll20 for playtesting to Roll20 Pro subscribers. If you're a Roll20 Pro subscriber, go check it out. It is called Burn Bright, BURNBRYTE. It is a science fantasy role-playing game that I have spent the last year or so working on with an amazing team. Jim McClure, Darcy Ross, Kat Cool, all amazing designers who I've been working with on this game, and it is now in the beta playtest. We could use your feedback. So if you're a Roll20 Pro subscriber, or if you've been thinking about subscribing, now's a perfect time to do it if you want to check out a science fantasy game I created. This is not the final version yet. Once it's final, it will be available for sale on Roll20. You won't have to be a Pro subscriber, but if you want to get in on the playtest, now is the time. Please go check it out. This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Introcaso. Today on the show, I am talking with game designer Mike Myler about genre. It is a really, really great conversation. Mike is super in-depth with all of his amazing campaign settings that he has created. We worked together on the Book of Exalted Darkness. That was really, really fun. And we talk about Mists of Akuma because he's got a Kickstarter going on right now for an adventure for that campaign setting. So here is my conversation with Mike. A word to all of our listeners, to those with young or sensitive ears. This conversation gets a little bit saltier with the language than we normally get, so I just wanted to give you a heads up. All right, everybody, now I am here with one of my favorite people, Mike Myler. Welcome back to Tabletop Babble. It's awesome to have you here. For people who don't know, and they should, who are you and what do you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
Thank you again for having me. I am the editor of the eInsider Patreon. I create content for people's various campaign settings and then publish, or rather, license my own to publishers, and then they put it out there. I finally figured out what I am the other week. I'm an indirect market bookmaker.
That's awesome. And maker of very fine books, I might add. One of which you are kickstarting right now. So before we dive into our heavy genre topic, let people know, what is it that you're working on right now?
Well, back in April, I tried to launch a Kickstarter for the Imperial Matchmaker, which is a mega adventure set in Sanbaoshi, which is the Imperial capital of Soberin in my Mists of Akuma setting. But it wasn't going so great, so we kind of rolled it back, and I have reworked everything, and now it's the Kickstarter for two mega adventures that are Eastern Fantasy. One is called Trade War. It's an adventure path that takes characters from 3rd through 12th level and goes all over Soberin, and is finished. I have a 338-page hardcover right here called Trade War that I got in the mail the other day. We're also still trying to make Imperial Matchmaker. And unlike before, we're going to be making these for both Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and Shadow of the Demon Lord, because I was the first person to get a license to create content for Robert Schwab's excellent personal RPG.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I love Shadow of the Demon Lord.
The initiative system and like leveling every game, so many of the things he did, you could just tell were like him biting his own tongue off working on 3.0 stuff, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, he made the game that he wanted to make. You could totally tell that. It is a really, really fun game. And Mists of Akuma is a really fun setting, and also a really fun hack of the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons system, and I guess of Shadow of the Demon Lord, right? You've sort of hacked that for Mists of Akuma as well.
More hacking was involved with 5th edition, I think. With Shadow of the Demon Lord, there's not as much infrastructure, you know?
Less to hack, as it were.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about genre and Mists of Akuma. As we dive in here, like, what is genre? How do you think of genre?
I got a film studies degree, a decade ago at this point. And I remember I had a genre studies class. And genre is really weird because it's a hybridization of intent and inferral, right? So what's a good example of a movie? Howard the Duck. You remember Howard the Duck?
I do remember Howard the Duck.
The genre that the people making Howard the Duck thought the movie was going to be is not the genre that society has decided the movie is, right? Like, we think it's a campy, funny, like, camp actually is the first thing that just like blasts out in a neon sign with Howard the Duck. And I don't think that when they were making the movie, they were trying to make it campy. I think they were trying to make like a superhero comedy film that appealed to both adults and children.
Sure.
And what they came out with was just like hilarious camp. So there's this example of like what genre is. It's really amorphous thing. And I would identify it as something that started with like book and magazine sellers who were just trying to like inform the public. Like, now that we have, you know, printing presses and places where, you know, you don't have to be the king to read the books. This is a drama book, and this is a, you know, fiction book, and this is a history book, and so on and so forth. After mass media started to become like a real thing in the 50s, 60s, you can pick where you want. You could even say the 20s. With like film and television, genre became much, much more important because there's so many more options for what you can see and like intake, that there needs to be more definitions of genre so you can sort through them all faster. And now at this point, we're at this almost postmodernism of genres where I can point at an object and tell you like 5 or 6 different genres it might fit into.
So, you know, I think that makes sense, right? We're getting at a place where people want to break the machine and want to say this belongs in a bunch of different genres. And I think that's awesome because we get these really rich, deep things, deep campaign settings in the case of RPGs. Specifically, I'm thinking about your work. You've worked in a lot of different genres when it comes to story, right? Mists of Akuma is one. Hypercore 2099 is like a totally different genre and that sort of thing. So how do we, when we sit down, like, do you think about genre like, okay, this is where I want this to fit into? Do you let the people who are reading your work sort of assign the genre later? How do you start with genre?
Well, so in the tabletop RPG industry, and this is one of the reasons that I pursue this as a career as opposed to films, you just get more time and more space than anywhere else, right? Like, you could talk about any other medium you like, and I guarantee you that we get more room to explain what the hell we're doing in a tabletop RPG than in anything else. When I make campaigns, and I actually don't start off with a genre. I mean, I'll have an idea, like, okay, well, Mists of Akuma is going to be like, you know, it's going to be like medieval Japan, but like they have magic, so the foreigners bring like ultra tech, and you know, but that's really all I have until I pick my North Star. So the North Star is this design tool I use where each setting should have like it should evoke something from you when you're interacting with the book, right? So I pick one word, and everything that goes into the book either fits that word or it doesn't go into the book, right? So in Varanthia, which is a hilarious thing to talk about with genres, my favorite thing that a reviewer said about it is they referred to it as jamais vu. So that means it defies genre, and that's because we jammed so many different genres inside of Varanthia Codex that like trying to lay one on it is impossible. But like that kind of thing happens because the word for the North Star for Varanthia Codex was radical. So anything that you find in the book, you should be like, oh, that's radical. And like, I promise you, if you go look through that book, you'll be like, man, that son of a bitch, that is radical. Genre definitely plays a part in that, but the North Star normally doesn't have to do with a genre. Like in Mists of Akuma, it was just cool. Everything needs to be cool. And Wasteland was about survival, and Hypercore 29, unsurprisingly, is about hyper. Book of Exalted Darkness, one that you worked on, actually, the North Star was genre-based because it was a double word. It was either it had to be sacred or blasphemous. It was one or the other. Once you've settled on a genre, and if you're making your own setting, again, I strongly recommend having a North Star word before you settle on anything else.
Yeah, how do you start with genre? For instance, Mists of Akuma is described as Eastern noir fantasy steampunk, right? We've sort of got Eastern fantasy, we've got noir, we've got steampunk. I think in a lot of people's minds, those are 3 different genres. Did you set out to do sort of, these are all the genres I want in my product? Or were you like, I'm starting here and wherever the chips fall, that's what genre it is?
It's like a slow, long reveal. I didn't see the whole of Soberin, you know, the world that Mists of Akuma is all about, until like, you know, the last bit of the final copy was done being written. Yeah, I just imagine like if I was walking through this place, what would be in it, and then I try to give it mechanical boundaries and framework. So I guess that is genre based, right? Because I'm thinking like, okay, well, what does the city look like? And what do the nearby villages look like? What are the settlements? What are the roads?
Do you think genre plays into your adventures then at all? Once sort of you've established the genre.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. Oh, yeah, I guess that's a good point. So a lot of the genre is based on what a narrative is, right? So like a drama versus a comedy versus an action all have very different narrative styles and things are going to tie to that are intrinsically part of the genre. So in that case, yeah, it was really easy with Mists of Akuma because like it's Eastern fantasy, so everything's about samurai and nobility and feudalism. Then the noir part really resonates the most in the adventures. There's a really amazing article called Notes on Film Noir by Paul Schrader that everyone just kind of points to. So there's like Freudian fear of water and high contrast and lots of oblique lines, which obviously don't translate into tabletop RPG quite as easily. But like the main characters, if they survive, it's normally not like a sun shining happy day kind of victory. There is a huge loss involved in overcoming whatever obstacles they've overcome and so on and so forth. Like the really great example is the Postman Always Rings Twice, where the dude is dictating everything that's happened into a dictaphone, and then at the very end you find out that he has died. Right? Like there's that everything needs to be Pyrrhic in a Mists of Akuma adventure because the genre is noir.
Sure, yeah, that definitely makes sense. And so that can be kind of your North Star for adventure design, right? The genre can help be your North Star when you sit down to write an adventure if you've already got the established setting to go on, which I think is helpful.
It'd be more like a roadmap. Like a North Star is something you look at like, oh shit, where the hell are we? We lost our compass. Like this is always going to be there. It's always visible, that kind of thing. I would liken genre to more of a roadmap because it's going to tell you how your narrative plays out.
Sure. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think that's totally true. What should we look for, right? If we're working in a genre like noir or like how do we determine, okay, we're in this genre, we want to do something interesting and unexpected with it, but we also want people to feel like they are in a noir or in that sort of thing. Are there ways we can stay in a genre but still, subvert the tropes of that genre?
No, sure. Knowing the tropes is good. So start there, and that's easy because of TV tropes. There's a million websites for them.
Very true, right? Yeah, you can look up genre tropes super, super easy with a simple Google search. And how do we subvert those but still stay in the genre? Like how can we be surprising in a noir but still be in a noir genre?
Specifically speaking about noir, you have like a long and storied history with hundreds and if not thousands or tens of thousands of examples to draw upon. But those things don't have fantasy elements. I would say to know your tropes and then think of the most creative ways where you can work in that element of fantasy and then stick to it. And as for like making it feel like it's in genre, that's mostly about atmosphere. If you're writing like a National Lampoon style comedy one shot, you should avoid taking an overly serious tone. You should have the read aloud be light and evocative, but not too dramatic, right? Like you want to set the stage every time that you're providing information in an adventure module. You're setting the stage for the GM to use it to do this or that. So make sure that what you put on stage are props and good lighting and a working microphone, as opposed to dark lighting and making sure the costuming is all drab gray colors and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that's very true too, right? The tone is going to be super important to your genre, and finding that is really, really important to making people feel like they're in a noir or they're in a comedy or they're in, that sort of thing. Have you ever tried to do comedic before in RPGs?
I think at least a couple times, yeah. Comedy is exceptionally difficult to write. It's notorious for that. One of the adventures for Varanthia is the Black Knight, where, yeah, that's right. It's that Black Knight, and you fight him like 3 times in 3 different styles, and it definitely comes off as funny at certain parts, yeah.
That's awesome. When you're trying to do that in RPGs, like when you're trying to be funny, my experience has been like, it's best to sort of like set up the situation and then let the players and the GM be the ones to have like a lot of fun with it, to write like setups and gags rather than jokes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And I would also promote writing funny characters. It's a lot easier to write a funny character that you include as opposed to setting up a funny scenario.
Yeah, especially because that scenario could go anywhere. And usually comedy requires a very specific punchline to make things work. So that makes perfect sense.
Minsk and boo, man. Minsk and boo.
That's right. That's right. So when you're working with something that encompasses a lot of genres, how do you appease all of those masters? You know, how do you make sure that all those genres work together? Like when you're doing something for Mists of Akuma, like say a mega adventure.
As long as you're following your narrative stuff, right? Like for the case of Mists of Akuma, it'd be Eastern fantasy is sort of like the set dressing, and then Noir kind of guides the scriptwriter, and then steampunk is the stage crew coming out the end and adding props.
Yeah, and do you usually try to think of it that way as like a film or a stage production?
Mists of Akuma is kind of stream of consciousness. Like the one adventure, no joke, and it's been reviewed very well. Nobody's upset with it. It's all 5 out of 5s. The Cursed Soul of Scorpion Samurai was from start to finish, making the maps and everything. Friday to I think the next Friday, I sent in the print file and everything because it just like pours out. I can't help it.
Do you get inspired by different genres? Like when you're writing something, do you read particular books or watch particular TV shows in that genre? Or are you just like, this is it, I'm ready and I can go because you're a nerd and you've consumed this stuff your whole life?
Well, I'm always in a state of being concerned that I'm going to inadvertently take somebody's ideas or something. So I try to like avoid it. Like what's Kaidan's really cool, but I avoided it a lot since Mists of Akuma. I started working on that because I don't want to accidentally take Michael Turney's awesome Japanese horror stuff and obviously not intentionally, just like subconsciously stealing like an idea or something. There's a big wall set up. And then whenever I move on to another project, then I might go check some stuff out. I do occasionally watch stuff when people tell me like, oh man, this reminds me so much of X. Then I will try to watch it. Like somebody told me that Mists of Akuma was a lot like the Iron Fortress Cabaneri, I think it's called, which is this really dope anime where like zombies have overtaken Japan and there are these cities connected by a rail line where the Iron Fortress Cabaneri runs on, right? But I didn't watch it while I was doing Mists of Akuma stuff. I watched it while I was doing other stuff. It's weird what I watch because I have a second monitor set up, and a long time ago I just got accustomed to working with background voices. So I'll watch old musicals, and I think I've watched 30 Rock like 5 times. So I think I brought this up before. Have you watched the video yet?
Yeah, about John Cleese talking about creativity. Yeah.
He gives this amazing 30-minute speech at some German television thing in the 80s. And it's funny, so if you haven't watched it, you will be amused. But more importantly, he talks about being creative, and John Cleese is a member of Monty Python, has been knighted for being creative. So basically one of the most creative people on the planet. And he explains that in order to like produce good, fun, creative content, you need to be in a state of play. So I just try to put on whatever gets me closer to that state of play. Recently, it's been Altered Carbon, my second rewatch of Altered Carbon.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That makes perfect sense, too. There's a lot of weird and fun stuff going on in Altered Carbon. Same thing with musicals and 30 Rock, right? It really can put you in a mindset where you're excited to work, which I think is always, that's where I am always kind of doing my best. I don't know about you, Mike. I can force myself to write. I don't get writer's block in that sense. Like I can always be putting pen to page, but I'm much better at it and much faster when I am in a more playful and more relaxed state of mind.
There's a huge difference between writing and inspired writing.
Definitely. I know some people say they need the deadline and that sort of thing. They need the pressure, but I prefer to just be totally inspired and go there whether or not there is pressure.
Pressure can help to inspire. But it's better when you're just in the right mood and it's there and you just got to get it out.
Don't go anywhere. There's more Tabletop Babble coming up. Hey there, listeners. It's Shane.
And Ishan, your hosts from the Total Party Thrill podcast, the newest addition to the Don't Split the Podcast network.
We talk topics that help you, dear listener, create and play better RPG games.
We have a back catalog of more than 150 weekly episodes.
And we got nominated for an Emmy for episode 11, Social Contracts.
In episode 154, we talked about crossing the moral event horizon. How evil is too evil?
We also recap our home games, like the 40k Rogue Trader campaign, Dynasty Unwarranted.
But that's mainly just you trying to kill us all. In your defense, our characters are greedy idiots.
Don't forget the 3 years we spent in Eberron playing Morning Glory, your 5th edition D&D campaign.
We also review new RPGs and books, and every episode we build a 5th edition D&D character in the Character Creation Forge.
You might check out the Pint-Sized Punisher from episode 119, a halfling with a bad attitude, and 14 levels of Barbarian.
So to recap, Total Party Thrill, RPG advice, campaign recaps, and D&D characters built by your dashing hosts every single week.
What more could you possibly want?
To get back to the actual show?
Oh yeah, let me just hit this button, and here you go.
All right, back to the show. You know, we should, in case people don't know really what Mists of Akuma is, let's do a quick dive into that. So sort of give the listeners the elevator speech on Mists of Akuma.
160 years ago, foreigners appeared over the Great Divide, this like giant energy wall at the edge of the world where the sea falls off into a waterfall. They are flying in advanced technology that they use to subjugate the people of Soberin and draft them into the War of Kaio, which is happening on the other side of the Great Divide. And then suddenly, about 60 years ago, all communication with the foreigners just stops. So the Kengan occupation persists for about 50 years. And during this time, all the inhuman races, all the like 14 different Henge yokai and the Tanukis and the Omi and there's a bunch of them. There's like 23 different races. They all get put into different prefectures. About 10 years ago, Emperor Masudo leads a rebellion that puts him back on the throne. And things seem to be going well, but the Mists of Akuma reappear. There are these primordial fogs that strip people of their virtue and transform them into Adeto Oni, which are really fast, high-jumping zombies. To deal with the threat of the Mists of Akuma, Emperor Toshi has created Bengoshi, which are these government officials who are badasses in their own right, but have the ability to deputize people to become actors of the state. So they pick out adventurers and send them on important missions, which more often than not are about intrigue and like increasing their own power base as opposed to saving Soberin. So in addition to the Mists stripping people of their virtue, it can also artificially age objects inside of it. And when an object in Soberin has been around for 100 years or has been around for some time and exposed to the Mists of Akuma, it can transform into Tsukumogami, which is from Japanese folklore. It's essentially a mimic. Depending on how it was treated in life, it could be like helpful and nice, or it could be malicious and violent. And because of war and all of the fighting of the rebellion, people are extremely, extremely, extremely concerned about technology and treat it like witchcraft because your gun's really great until it grows teeth and bites you because it's a violent piece of shit that has been used only to kill people.
Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah, it's taken me a while to really refine that. I still forget the Tsukumogami like every time. They're so important.
If your North Star was cool, it is definitely a very cool campaign setting, and you're running a Kickstarter for a mega adventure in there right now, which we talked about.
Adventure Path and a mega adventure.
Yeah, which if you want to know what the difference between those is, you can listen to our podcast before that. But break it down for me. What are these mega adventures in this adventure path?
All right. Well, the Imperial Matchmaker, so in the original Kickstarter, somebody pledged an unholy amount of money. And so I've been running a campaign for him and his friends. And after a while, I was like, I'm sitting on like 50, 60,000 words of material. Like, I should just publish this. So that's what Imperial Matchmaker is. He is himself heavily involved in theater. I think last time I checked, he was the guy translating Pokemon manga into English. And he's like way into no theater and all this other stuff. So it's very intrigue-laden, Imperial Matchmaker. It's about 400 years ago, in the Battle of Broken Spears, all of these 4 prefectures, the Hikisuru, the Gekido, the Kirai, and the Namida, get in this huge fight, and nobody's willing to accept defeat. Like, everybody ultimately stops fighting, but nobody will agree that they were the first to stand down, and they keep causing border disputes and like violent uprisings over this for about 4 centuries. Then Emperor Toshi's like, I'm tired of this. This is over. And to solve it, He has picked out 20 different brides and grooms to marry one another in between the 4 clans, and has set up 10 very lavish weddings over 1 month in the imperial capital of Sanbaoshi, and that's where the players come in. It opens up with them being invited to the emperor's estate, where they're part of a tea ceremony there, where a guy gets beheaded for interfering, and they're all told not to interfere, and then, of course, a bunch of different Bengoshi try to get them to interfere. It's about Sanbaoshi. The past week, I've been really expanding Sanbaoshi, and I think we've got another 20,000 words for it, so it's going to be a very in-depth exploration of the city. And there's lots of side quests, and the iconics. Imperial Matchmaker is intended for play with the Mists of Akuma iconics, which are illustrated by Claudio Pozis, and they're all awesome. I've compiled them into one PDF that'll be on the Kickstarter page. And depending on... not every single place has a subplot with one of the iconics involved, but a lot of the places in Sanbaoshi do. And the subplots like interweave with one another. So Piasu, the Irikutira warrior, essentially a samurai space marine hobgoblin, has been commissioned to get like an accurate map of an Oni warlord's territory. And there's a really good map maker in Sanbaoshi where everyone knows, like, oh yeah, Yogen Shah's navigation, she has the best maps. They're incredible. And his quest is to get, a map for this area. But first he's got to like get good with her, and she has a code and stuff, so he needs to have a friend help with that. And then once you get to know her, she's like, well, I can help you make this map, but first I need you to help me get printing plates made for my accurate map of the continent, because for whatever reason, somebody keeps trying to stop me. But the person who's stopping her is this Kappa, or a turtle for DM skill folks, that is a slave trader. And he's real fucked up. He's got this slaving ring that he puts on people. Anyway, he's tied into Matsu Tsunamo's subplot. So once you get into either one of those, you can get into contact with this guy. And then he's hired out the arcane trickster gang that is involved with Rika Orusan, the seer Tengu character, or Kenku, whatever, your flavor, Kenku or Tengu. Her subplot that has to do with like finding objects that give her premonitions of the future from where she's from. So it's all very, very interwoven with one another. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun with it. And that's all in one city, right? That's just like, you're going to be here for... There are side quests that take you away, but they'll always bring you back to Sanbaoshi. So it's as Mists of Akuma is intended to, as a noir, it's very city-focused. So that's Imperial Matchmaker. That's a Mega Adventure. That's one. Trade War is the one that's already done. It collects the 6 adventures that already exist from Mists of Akuma that you can go pick up right now if you really like. So the core book for Mists of Akuma involves Revenge of the Pale Master, which somebody else wrote. The guy who got me into D&D actually wrote it. And then after that, I just started to produce them, like I said, as they came into my brain and refused to be ignored. Like, so Crystal of Scorpion Samurai was happened at a separate time than Scourge of Robai Shita Temple and Feud Primordial and all that. But after I got to the third one, I was like, oh man, Mike, you could easily do this with like progressing levels, because like this one's for 5th to 6th, and this one's for like 8th to 9th, and this one's for like 3rd to 4th. With that in mind, I started to put in more seeds and stuff, because like you always include adventure seeds in whatever you're writing. Whether or not you plan to come back to it, GMs use those adventure seeds to make their own, little plots and stuff in an adventure module. I collected all those 6 and I went over them, and then I worked with a guy named Dwan Bird to figure out like a plot to hold them all together. And that's what the Trade War supplement is. And it's about 150 pages, I think it is. So if by chance somebody has already purchased all 6 of the Mists of Akuma adventures, they don't have to get the hardcover to get the adventure path. They can just get the softcover supplement. What happens in it is, all right, it's going to get pretty complicated, because it is fairly complicated.
I mean, I can only imagine it's so layered, you know what I mean? It's so amazing and rich. You've got so much to draw on. So if you want to give more of an overview, that's totally cool.
Yeah, so, all right. Soberon was founded by the Imperial siblings, these like immortal, super powerful demigod type folks. They're still around, but they're very secretive about being around and hidden, with the exception of one who like just made his entire island reappear in the southern bay, but that's not involved here. So one of the Imperial siblings sees that the Pale Master is returning, right? He sees that this incredibly powerful necromancer is about to rise in Soberon once again, and with the Mists of Akuma roiling around and all the intrigue between the clans, he has very little confidence that they'll be able to overcome it. So he starts stealing and installing Irikotira armor, which is the steampunk samurai base, or the steampunk space marine samurai, into just farmers. So like lone farmers out in the middle of nowhere, their families have died. They fall asleep one night, and the next day they wake up and they're in like super suits. And they don't know why, and they're afraid because the Irikotira, once they figured out what's going on, are super pissed because they very, very violently protect their technology, and they start trying to hunt these farmers down. And throughout the adventures, you go through the adventures. Then in between adventures, you gradually learn more about these plot and like see the farmer. Well, first you hear rumors about these farmers, and then you see the farmers and like get into a fight on the roadway that allows them to escape, and then like one of them comes like crying to you halfway through, like, please help me. I am terrified. I can't get this thing off. Like it's permanent and all this other stuff. And you have to like escort him, and then he ditches you. But ultimately, there are 4 factions that all want this armor, right? There are the Soburi militia who aren't really sure what to do, but they don't want to get killed by the Irikotira. There's the Machibuse traders, who are like a bunch of Hengyukai merchants who have decided sort of to throw their lot in with the Imperial sibling and are helping him get the equipment around different parts of the country, and then he goes and oversees the installation. The Mitsugiyosha Consortium, which are smugglers that use Tsukumogami and have caught on to what's going on and want to get the Irikotira armor for their own fell purposes, which is to incite a Tsukumogami rebellion across all of Soberin, which does happen at the end. The Irikotira warriors who want to get all that shit back. And then the traditionalist armies. So the rival of the Imperial sibling that steals all the Irikotira armor figures out that his sibling is up to something, and just because he hates him, wants to stop him. So like he gets all of the traditionalists in the south like all riled up and like marches an army north. So as this all comes to a head, the militias have gathered. The Soburi warriors have gathered together into militias. The traditionalist army is marched up north. The Irikotira chapters, 3 of them, has sent contingents, and suddenly, like, Bone Keep arises. So Honenoroi Keep arises in the north, just outside of Kazaki, and the Pale Master starts like his final ritual. And throughout all this stuff, as you've been going across Sober and going through these adventures, you run into 3 things. 1, black Torii gates. So Torii gates are really an important thing in Mists of Akuma. There's like a restricted travel between prefectures, and you have to go through Torii gate and get your shit stamped and stuff. But these black Torii gates have no guards on them. They are like seeping with evil energies. Destroying them corrupts you, and they're a mysterious problem, but not something you can really do much about until like the end game. Then you also run into the Mubo brothers. And the Mubo brothers don't actually have anything to do with the larger plot. They're just fun. So in the first adventure, you fight these 2 loud braggarts that basically carry around small cannons that they fire haphazardly through the town. And you have to kill them. They pick a fight with you and they fight to the death. So they're going to die. And once they die, their brothers start hearing about their deaths and start trying to get revenge. So the first one is like you're in a winter valley and you're walking through, and this sharpshooter fires at explosives he's placed at the top of the ravine to like trap you, and then has you in a long kill box. So you have to like sprint up to him and climb up and kill him. And then the second one was Torasuda, Kenny Torasuda. They're all based off different attributes. So the first 2 are strength and con. The second one's wisdom. Third one's intelligence. So he tricks you into a warehouse that he's prepared to set on fire and has goons waiting to fight you inside of. Then the 5th one was all about charisma. So while you're on the high seas, a bunch of pirates attack you because one of the Mubo brothers has tricked them into thinking that you guys have a bunch of money and stuff. And then the last one is all about like being fast. And it's this very exciting treetop to train top battle. So those are the Mubo brothers. Oh, and the nature demons, the other part that's a recurring theme. In the first adventure, you fight Fuko, the wind demon. And Fuko is an unknowing servant of the Pale Master. There are 1 for every season. So you fight Kumorui, the Arctic spider. Shidai Tabaru, the summer corpse eater. And then Odabutsu and Kidobutsu, who are the... oh, no, I forgot about the water guy. Yeah, the Mad Purintan, the guy on the water. It's about spring. And then there's a guy about metal and a guy about Oni demon about metal and Oni demon about wood, who are like orchestrating all of the Pale Master's stuff that's going on with the nature demon. Yeah, And then you finally get to the Bone Keep, and I've made OGL versions of the mass combat rules, because depending on your actions throughout the adventure path, you'll have set up different allies, right? So you might be really down with the Irokotira warriors, or you most likely are allying with the Saburi militia. And before you can kill the Pale Master, you have to get inside of his keep, and there are a bunch of battlefield defenses and a legion of undead protecting it. So you need these armies to provide an escort to make enough of a distraction that you can insert yourself into the 9 levels of the Bone Keep. And then the Bone Keep itself is based off of the different Buddhist hells. So Buddhist hells are great, by the way. I'm going to just open with that. One of them has a giant flaming rooster, which is just perfect. So yeah, you fight your way up through there, and as you go through, you encounter relic golems, and the relic golems are tied to the battlefield defenses outside. So if you defeat them and destroy them, then the Saburi the living creatures outside have a better chance against the undead legions until you get to the top, fight the Pale Master, kill him. His keep is destroyed, and you have to survive it being destroyed. And then there's a huge, just 3-mile mound of bones sitting on the map.
Yeah, that is incredible, and is going to be super, super fun to check out. So if people want to support you in this endeavor, where should they go and what should they do?
Well, the entire time the Kickstarter is running, I will be posting every single day on MikeMyler.com a different Mortal Kombat character built using the rules as written and the Mists of Akuma rules. So if you're like, oh man, I'd love to have Johnny Cage or Scorpion or any of the characters from the first 2 games of the series fight my D&D players, A, I can tell you it's awesome and fun. B, I can tell you that they will enjoy it. And C, it'll be on my website.
Wow. Any character. We got Goro in there?
Yeah, Goro I made as a mutant.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. What about Reptile? We got Reptile.
I got Reptile. I even got Noob Sabot. The only one I skipped was Kintaro. Because technically the Centaur is not OGL, so I don't know. Maybe I'll do Kintaro before this post. We'll see. But no, I was pretty... the only one who came out that I didn't really need to use any Mists of Akuma stuff was Shao Kahn. He was perfect for a 20th level barbarian.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. This is awesome, Mike. This sounds really, really cool. And you've got a great team lined up. You called out some of the awesome people you're working with. Claudio Poses is going to be involved in this?
Yes, and my artist team has become predominantly female now at this point.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. Well, it's great that you have so many awesome things going on, and thank you for coming on to talk about genre. If people want to know more about you, where should they go and what should they do?
I would go to MikeMyler.com. I'm also on the Twitter at MikeMyler2, and at the top of my website, I have a Discord server where you are welcome to come and poke me and ask me questions.
That's awesome, Mike. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on, man. It's fun.
What a great conversation with Mike. It is always awesome to have him on and pick his brain. His imagination and creativity is firing way above there. He just dreams up this awesome stuff. Mike, thank you for coming on. Tabletop Babble is only in its 2nd year here, and we could use your help growing. How can you do that? You can go leave us a review on iTunes. And if you leave a 5-star review, I will read it out loud and credit the person who left it, like Leor Blumenthal. Leor says, a wonderful podcast. Tabletop Babble really is fun and entertaining. The host, James Introcaso, has an infectious sincerity and the joy that he brings to all sorts of role-playing game topics. Highly recommend. Wow, thank you so much, Leor. I really appreciate this review. People, this is the top of the review list. I am out. So please head on over to iTunes and leave us a review so I have more to read and entertain you with. People, you can learn more about what I am doing over at worldbuilderblog.com and at twitter.com/JamesIntrocaso. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Thanks to Rudy Basso for founding it with me. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, was provided by Battle Bards. Don't forget that RPGs are like sex. It's for anyone who would enjoy it. Hey everybody, James Introcaso here. I just wanted to take a minute to let you know about Kobold Press. And Kobold Press, the makers of fine 5th edition third-party products such as the Midgard campaign setting, the Tome of Beasts, the Creature Codex, and so much more, now bring you the Warlock Bestiary. The Warlock Patreon from Kobold Press brings you the Warlock Bestiary for 5th edition. This new volume of a dozen monsters is available to all patrons who pledge $3 or more. It features great black and white artwork by Russ Nicholson, and you can go to patreon.com/koboldpress right now to become a patron. And when you do that, not only do you get access to the Warlock Bestiary, you get access to all kinds of great 5th edition content. I'm talking about character options, I'm talking about monsters, I'm talking about magic items, I'm talking about whole dungeons that you can drop into any game. If you love dark fantasy and 5th edition D&D, you have to check out the Warlock Patreon. I've been a member from the start, and it is way more bang for your buck than any other RPG thing I contribute to. So go check it out at patreon.com/koboldpress and get the Warlock Bestiary, old school monsters for 5th edition.